today we'll be looking at the new political structure of China as Mao took power, and how this helped consolidate communist rule over the country. In the last video, we looked at the economic and structural destruction that occurred as a result of the Civil War. And obviously, this created a lot of problems, which Mao had to solve to secure the party's hold on power. So, Mao's immediate steps after the Civil War. He confiscated the property of the nationalists, the Kuomintang, who, remember, fled to Taiwan, and he also put all public utilities and banks under state control, as well as foreign property, but not that of the USSR. I mean, they were kind of allies at this point. The USSR was just funding the communists in the preceding Civil War. And this is interesting, the last bullet point. You see, Mao and the communists obviously despised the bourgeois and upper classes, seeing them as corrupt capitalists. Bourgeois just means middle class, so the factory workers and owners and stuff, the factory owners, and stuff like that. But with China in such disarray after the Civil War, the CCP needed the expertise and skills of the bourgeoisie in order to rebuild. So Mao made a practical compromise here, until of course all of them served their purpose, after which they were denounced as enemies and subsequently arrested and or executed. So in terms of analyzing how Mao consolidated his power with these methods, well, through these immediate steps, the communists were provided with the essential tools, the foundation upon which to recover China into a state of stability and control. So the communists' power was more secure. Another step that the CCP took was to split the country into 6 different regions, named the bureaus. Okay, here we have the Northwest China Bureau, the Southwest China Bureau, the North China Bureau, Central, South, East, and Northeast. And in each bureau, you had 4 officials who were responsible for the administration of that particular area. You had the party chairman, the party secretary, the military commander, and the political commissar. Now, the last 2 positions were held by PLA officers. PLA stands for the People's Liberation Army, and they were basically the military force of the Communist Party. Now, since members of the PLA had these 2 high positions in each region, it certainly signifies the level of military influence in stabilizing the country. And because the PLA was so loyal to the party, it also helped ensure a consolidation of power. Also, dividing the nation into bureaus, this organizational reform in and of itself makes it easier to administer the country, as the bureaucratic processes which you usually find in politics were delegated, meaning that the actual act of administering becomes less of a burden, and exerting control over the entire country is much easier. Now, don't misunderstand me. Bureaucracy was most definitely still present in slowing down and delaying that revolutionary spirit which Mao wanted to sustain. But that is dealt with later. The party structure. Now, the Politburo consisted of about 20 leading members of the Communist Party. And as you can see in this diagram, it is the most powerful governing institution in the CCP. It is the key decision-making body. And the National People's Congress, just one level below the Politburo in the hierarchy, although in theory it had a say in the policies of the party, it was actually just a rubber stamping body, towing the party line and always agreeing with the decisions of the Politburo. But Mao himself, you see, was seen by the people as almost separate from the party structure. He was very clever in that he distanced himself from any mistakes that the CCP made, so that his cult of personality would not be tainted amongst the people, and instead he could place blames on other party members. Now, regardless of how far Mao was part of the party structure, he was still the ultimate authority figure within the CCP. The Politburo was under his leadership, and they could not make any decisions that he disagreed with. This doesn't mean he was active in politics and carried out every single detail of every single policy. It just meant that if he disagreed with a policy, the Politburo could not carry it out. Okay? He could implicitly agree with the Politburo's policies by not saying anything, and that would suggest agreement. But you see, the Politburo always had to guess whether Mao would agree with their policies, disagree. There was always that element of fear. Okay? So with the party organized in this manner, Mao certainly consolidated his own power and authority among the ranks of the CCP. Now, with the concept of democratic centralism, Mao further established his power. The theory of democratic centralism here is based on the idea that the revolutionary leaders of the CCP were the only ones educated enough to know what needed to be done, to know what was best for the working class and the peasant classes. Within the party itself, the reality was that by being obedient to Mao, the members demonstrated true communist democracy. If you look at the same diagram here, you have the workers and the peasants at the bottom, and they are allowed to elect representatives to go to the regional congresses and represent their views. So in this area here, this big gap, I've omitted quite a few levels of the hierarchy, but you don't necessarily need to know the entire party structure in great detail. Now, these elected members for the regional congresses would then go on to elect members for the institutions in the next level of the hierarchy, and so on and so on. So in theory, the power lay with the people, but in practice, the power base of the party was the Politburo, which in turn was under Mao's authority. Basically, what democratic centralism meant was that the views would be taken from the proletariat and the peasants, which is the democratic part, in inverted commas, but in reality the Politburo and Mao would have the ultimate say, which is the centralism part. Okay? So power is centralized towards the top level of the party structure. Now, what you can consider to be the three foci of Mao's power within the PRC, the People's Republic of China, are the party, the army, and the state, all interlinked and all under the authority of Mao. You could also consider these to be Mao's power base. Okay, but of course you could use other factors like the ideology of democratic centralism or propaganda and censorship. That's always big in communist dictatorships, the propaganda and the censorship, all that. So by the party we mean the Politburo, the Central Committee, the party secretaries and the bureaus, anything that's part of the CCP. And you see, the party creates policies. It makes decisions and sets the agenda for the People's Republic of China. The state implements these decisions and administers them. By the state, we mean the National People's Congress, the State Council, the ministries, the local and regional councils, etc. But of course, they are mostly rubber stamping bodies, as we established, which are in practice bound by the decisions of the Politburo. So the party makes the decisions, the state implements and administers the decisions, and the army enforces them. The military force of the PRC is essentially the People's Liberation Army, and they do all the heavy lifting. I don't know what that glitch was there. They do all the heavy lifting for Mao and the CCP. We'll talk more about the PLA in another video where we will discuss the anti-his movements and the reunification campaigns and other important events in further consolidating the party's power. So of course, we have the loyalty of the PLA to Mao. And as we said, Mao has de facto control over the Politburo, which in turn has de facto control over the state. So at the center of all this, we have Mao Zedong himself, and this new political structure which was devised most definitely is a source of consolidation in laying the foundations for Mao's power. Okay, that's it for this video. This has been the Awesome Tutor. Bye.